storyline description and thought of so I don't know if you've got a connection with this particular viewer.
No, I don't.
I thought that's where the laugh came from. Possibly.
No. The question made me laugh. The way that he worded it, it's hilarious.
But Cam has been amazing when it's come to, well, just so many different topics, subjects, personnel, so forth. But Robert Burns in particular, if I could piece together all the statements that Cam's made down through the years about Robert Burns, it would be just a beautiful thing.
Oh, man. Yeah. It would. That would be a serious undertaking. So if you're listening to this as podcast only later, the question from George 850 Kane is Robert Burns a myth at this point? And that's what made me laugh because he seems like a mythical creature. The thing about it is I've seen the mythical creature. I've seen him do what made him into a myth, what made him into a blue chip recruit that day at American Heritage years ago, man, for the Under Armour, the opening regional down here. And he was a high school freshman at the time. You have all of the big rising. So he's a rising sophomore. He was a current high school freshman going into his 10th grade year. So you have the rising sophomore or rising juniors and rising seniors who are all 4-stars and 5-star recruits. They're guys who are playing in the NFL now. I mean, just everybody's All-Americans. You know, they played in the All-American games, and they're doing their recruiting thing. They're running around and doing all the testing and whatnot. And Robert Burns put on a show that day, unlike which we've rarely ever seen. It was the highest Spark rating ever in the history of Spark ratings to that point. I mean, he was a freak. It was crazy. Like, he was doing so much because on the main field you had quarterbacks and receivers. And on the backfield at Heritage, you had linebackers, running backs, and offensive, defensive line. He was doing so much so well that they moved the linebacker, running back group to the main field because all the journalists and bloggers and parents and everybody who was there started going to the backfield because you're like, whoa, you're hearing these rumors about this kid just putting on the show. And he's 5'10", 215 with 3% body fat at 15 years old. He was a unicorn. He was a mythical creature come alive. And I'm there. Bud Elliott, who used to be with SB Nation, he's there next to me. Michael Felder in the Bleachers is his Twitter account. He used to run inthebleachers.net. Now he's with Stadium, I believe. He was there next to me. Steven Nelson, who's now on MLB.com. He was Felder's partner at Bleacher Report doing national recruiting that year. You got the ESPN guys. You got the 247 Sports guys. All those guys literally shoulder to shoulder with me. And we're just watching Robert Burns put on a show, the likes of which you have very, very seldom, if ever, seen. And then he's gone. He's like Kaiser Soze. Like, it just poof, out of there. And he's just been injury after injury after injury. And, excuse me, you see him to this point, he's what, 5'10", 225. He got a couple carries last year. He's this big, just muscular back. You still got quick feet. You still have all the athletic traits. But he is just cursed with all of these injuries, man. And to this point, he's like barely, I don't think he's practiced yet, this fall, because he's not ready coming back off of the injury from last year, and yeah, it would take Mark a long time to go back and piece together all the statements I've made about Robert Burns, because he's a 4th-year junior this year. So he's 4 years in college. I've been talking about this kid for 7, almost 8 years real time from the day that I saw that and gushed because, again, I'm there shoulder to shoulder with all of the big names that you know from the recruiting industry. And there's all these 4-stars and 5-stars who are going to sign with teams that current year. And everybody disregarded all of them to focus on this freshman who wasn't even on the roster. So we had to go to the organizers and say, who's number 477? What is his name and what high school does he go to? Because he's not even on our list. And he put on that kind of a show. So for more than half of a decade, I've been talking about Robert Burns like this. Then he gets, he plays a sophomore year, doesn't really play his junior year, has 9 carries for 73 yards and a 99-yard kickoff return touchdown in his senior year. Yes, that was the entirety of the statistics, and I know it by heart because it was 10 snaps. Then he comes to Miami, boom, gets blown up by John Garvin in practice. He gets injured. Okay, so during his redshirt year. Boom, he redshirts. Next year, boom, gets injured. Next year, boom, gets injured. This year, his fourth year, boom, he's still injured. So, like, it does almost feel like he's a mythical creature. It almost feels like he's, Marcus Dupree from The Best That Never Was, or like Boobie Miles. You know what I mean? Just like, because look, go look up the film from his freshman year or from his sophomore year. It exists. There are people down here. We've seen him in person do these incredible mythical things. And since then, he's just been ravaged with injuries, which, it sucks. It sucks for him. I could say other things, but I'm just going to say it sucks for him because like I said, I've seen what he can do. I've seen the mythical status. I've seen what made him into this mythological creature. And to have that taken away from just injury after injury after injury is just, it's cruel, and like, I'm not saying that anybody did it to him intentionally or anything, but just, it's, I feel for the kid, obviously. Then you get guys and unfortunately, you recruit over him. You have a Cam Harris who was recruited the year after Robert Burns. Boom, he slides right into the number 2 back. It was Travis Homer and DJ Dallas. And then you had Cam Harris, so he comes in, he with Lorenzo Lingard. Lingard gets hurt, and then Harris steps up. Now, you have Harris as running back 1, and then you got 2 freshmen who, one has the second most rushing yards in Broward County high school history behind Tyrone Moss, God rest his soul, that being Jalen Knighton. You have the other one who put up ridiculous numbers and was a 3-time high jump champion in Dade County at Belen Jesuit, being Donald Chaney Jr. Both of those guys are recruited over Robert Burns. So not only are you ravaging with these injuries, but since those injuries are holding you back, we got these young guys who are amazing, and they're going to step into that void and everything. But I mean, I know it's a long and winding answer, but at this point, currently, yes, I would say that Robert Burns is a myth. He's a mythological creature. But for those of us who were there at the time and saw the myth live and in person, it was real. Trust and believe. It was real.
I say this not as a knock on listening to all this analysis throughout the years about Robert Burns. I feel truly blessed to know this much about a player who has 31 career carries and 2 pass receptions, 3 pass receptions, and has reached the end zone 1 time. Do you remember that 1 time, Cam?
No.
It was against Duke last year. He had his most prolific game, even though it was, in terms of yards per carry, not impressive. 18 carries for 48 yards in the loss to Duke and reached the end zone.
Now I do remember that.
1 kick return in his career at Miami, 31 carries, 3 pass receptions. I was trying to think of somebody who rivals this type of storyline, but I can't come up with it, because if you go to another university and somebody was some kind of phenom and then they didn't do anything, then we don't know about them because they didn't step on the field at Michigan or Penn State or wherever, unless you're really entrenched in that program. I was going to like the Marcus Dupree, but obviously he shined in college. It was just brief. And then he did the USFL and got hurt and never happened. And then it's really kind of poignant and sad if you see the documentary on Marcus Dupree. He finally gets to the NFL, but he's a shell of himself, and he has like 1 burst for like 15 yards in a meaningless game, Giants-Rams game at the end of the year. But that was kind of like okay, we could have seen this for 10 years, but we didn't. Yeah.
I mean, it's more like Boobie Miles, man. Just got, injured. And I mean, I'm saying he tried to come back, but I mean, was a superstar, got injured. I mean, sure, Boobie Miles didn't play in college, and, Robert Burns has been at the University of Miami, but I mean, it just, it hasn't gone for him like I think anybody hoped. And I think at the end, like the bitter end of his recruiting class, they finally dropped Robert Burns from a 4-star to a 3-star. And it had taken years of that to get there. And I remember having talked to a couple of guys in the recruiting world, a couple journalists, bloggers, whatever you want to call them, who had made the trek to a couple different games of Gulliver Prep, hoping to see him, because like, duh, you want to see the guy. And then, you're talking, okay, well, warm-ups, I don't see 22 out here. Hey, coach, 22 playing today? Kind of a thing. And then all of a sudden he's in street clothes and everything. And it just is, it just hasn't gone the way that I think anybody wanted or hoped for the guy. But yeah, I mean, even through all of that, even with, some of the guys who do the rankings for the services, they held on until almost the final update of that recruiting class, because again, that day at American Heritage at his freshman and sophomore year, they had seen it and you figure, okay, even if a guy is injured, he's still a blue chip guy. Like I've seen him do things that other guys have never done still. I mean, okay, that spark rating has been eclipsed finally down the road, but it took 4 years for that rating to get, eclipsed or whatever when he was in college already, things like that. So, I mean, yeah, those in the recruiting industry, they figure, okay, he's still a blue chip. And then finally, after that very, very, very truncated senior year, they said, let's throw him on the top of the 3-star group, or in that bucket. So yeah, it hasn't gone the way that anybody would have hoped for Robert Burns. But hey, he's a guy from Miami. He obviously has love for the University of Miami. He wanted to go to the University of Miami and wear the Hurricanes colors. So he can always have that, even though I can be critical of people for their performance on the field, I wish them all well personally. Even Malik Rozier, I know people are saying, I was very critical of him as a football player, but I've never wished ill upon him or anyone. So, for Robert Burns, I hope that, I wish him well, and going through everything, if he's, eventually going to go pro in something other than the sports, I hope that he has peace with that, because I know it can be tough, especially if somebody like his caliber, because you're on top of the mountain and all of a sudden, you're left to do something else. And look, most of us are doing something else. I was a teacher and now I do the secret day job, Mark, obviously in broadcasting, you as a listener watching this video or whatever, you do something that's outside of sports. And we were all athletes, we all had, goals and dreams. I wanted to be a basketball player, but my growth chart in third grade said I was going to be 6'9", and I ended up being 6 feet tall. I mean, I had some skills, but I wasn't that kind of a dude. I had one low-level interest, and I tore my ankle up senior year of high school. And then I said, well, I go to this prep school. I'm going to graduate with honors, and I'm going to use this brain to get me somewhere else. But I kind of already come to terms with the fact I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. Somebody like Robert Burns, maybe it's been a smaller or shorter time to deal with that. So hopefully, he has the ability and the faculties to do that. And, hopefully if he needs to get some assistance, and being all kinds of transparent, I've been to therapy in my life. So it's done wonders for me. And if he needs that, then hopefully, and I know that there is a support at the University of Miami, especially with sports psychologists and just mental health professionals and things like that. And if he needs that, I hope he gets that as well. So, I obviously do wish him well and everything, but no, it hasn't gone in terms of football performance the way that anybody would have expected or hoped for Robert Burns in Miami, but it's like that sometimes.